All right, everyone, we are officially started. Just a reminder that this is being recorded for future viewing for ILA members. As I mentioned before, my name is Kyle Odell. I am the coordinator of the case competition since 2020. It's been really a pleasure and a way for me to stay active with ILA. And honestly, I feel like I learn a ton from watching our finalists present. It's pretty amazing to see what our students do with the guidance from their coaches. Again, we'll be keeping the chat open so you can submit comments and please submit any questions using the Q&A function on the Zoom, and we'll be keeping an eye on those and making sure they get addressed. Why we're here, whether you're a student wondering if the competition is right for you or a faculty member who's thinking about coaching a team, our panelists, they've been where you're standing. They are our resident experts. They're going to share some perspective and some words of wisdom. The way it's going to work, I'm going to give a general overview of the competition and the deadlines, which are very important in the process. We'll be hearing from some of our past coaches as well as some past competitors, and then we'll do a Q&A. In terms of the history of case competition, it's been a part of the annual conference for over a decade. Um, what I will say is students used to be able to have a lot of freedom in picking like the topics of what they were doing. We made the decision to focus both the graduate and undergraduate competitions on the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. We rotate the SDGs each year to give new challenges for our student competitors. We have a graduate school division and an undergraduate division. This year, our graduate students will be focusing on SDG 16, which is peace, justice, and strong institutions, while our undergraduate teams will be focusing on SDG 4, which is quality education. It is a three-round system. The first round is a executive summary that is submitted, and those are scored by judges. The second part is a live poster session that takes place during the actual conference. And then from that, up to three teams in both the graduate and undergraduate divisions are selected to do a finalist in-person presentation with judges who will be asking questions following each presentation. To highlight some of the timelines, registration for the competition is the deadline is September 23rd. Executive summaries are due October 15th. The competition takes place during the annual conference, which is October 28th through 31st in Toronto. The poster session will be that opening day, that Wednesday afternoon before the opening reception. The finalists present on Friday evening, and the winners are announced during the Saturday closing luncheon. All this information is in a very robust packet for the ISCC that is on the ILA website. So if you miss some of the things I just ran by, it's recorded. But I really encourage you to go to the ILA website and get that packet because it's very extensive. It has rubrics, the scoring rubrics that are used, and again, a lot of really rich details. If you win, the winning team gets $1,000 plus ILA student memberships. Um, and then the cool thing is, uh, in order to participate in the case competition, you need to be registered to attend the conference. And one important detail that we'll talk about is if you are named a finalist, you need to incorporate aspects of the in-person conference in your final presentation. And we'll talk about that in a little bit. So we're going to move on to some introductions of who we have here with us. Um, first of all, I'm going to have Victoria go. And if you can just tell us your name, your role with the case competition, and maybe something you wish someone had told you before you participated.
Sure. Thanks, Kyle. My name is Victoria Carico. I am the Assistant Director of our President's Leadership Program at Christopher Newport University down in Southeast Virginia. I have been coaching ILA teams, I want to say, since somewhere between 2020 and 2021, and it has become one of my favorite parts of my job. We bring multiple teams every year, so it's cool to kind of be an umbrella coach over all of those teams. One thing I wish I knew when I had gotten started is that the problem that the students choose is by far the most important part. it's not always about how you're solving it. It's about the interest level and the feasibility of the problem itself. So really starting from day one, that's, I think, the most important piece.
Okay. Eric, why don't you go next?
Yeah, I'm Eric Kaufman, a professor at Virginia Tech, and I was the coach of the graduate winning team in 2024. One of the things that I wished I had known before I started coaching is to really emphasize the value of the experiential learning more than winning. The first team that I coached, they invested a lot of time in it and they got second place and they were really disappointed. And I thought I needed to do some things ahead of time to just convey that, look, if you don't win, it's okay. Like you have to value the learning along the way because that was, they did a great job. And, you know, there are a lot of great teams. And so just trying to reinforce that. It was something that I knew, and I just thought I needed to reinforce that more before I had that first team.
Thank you. Next, we're going to have our three former competitors introduce themselves. Fiona, do you want to go ahead and go first?
Yeah, my name is Fiona St. Clair. I just graduated from Christopher Newport University. I was the undergraduate winner for last year's case competition, undergraduate case competition in the Czech Republic. And I guess a piece of advice that I wish I'd known before, kind of similar to Eric's, is like just remember that like to have fun, if you will, and that this is like an experience that's amazing regardless of if you win or not. I think I get very in my head about like everything having to be perfect, but you know, this entire experience, regardless if like you're competing or not, is just like absolutely amazing. So just remember to take it as it is.
Thank you. Jenny, how about you?
Jenny Okoliko, I just rounded up my PhD at the University of Nebraska, and I'm joining Austin Peay State University this fall as an assistant professor. I was the 2022 case graduate case competition winner, and one of the things that really stands out for me with that experience is that um, getting along with your team actually is part of the really big determining factor in how far you go, because a lot of time you're going to spend a lot of time with those people, and there's going to be some friction. There's going to be a lot of I think this is good, and someone thinks your amazing idea is not that amazing, and then you have to, so just thinking back to how that made me a stronger team player just really stands out to me. And yeah.
I want to second Jenny's point about getting along with your team because it's not a good look when you're arguing in front of the judges and the entire room, which I have seen. Israel, how about you?
Hello, my name is Israel Oedare. I was part of the Virginia Tech team that won the graduate level competition in 2024. One thing I wish someone had told me was that, I should spend some time learning about the projects of others. I think that myself and my team were fixated on, learning about our project, enjoying our project, that we didn't pay as much attention to learning about other people's projects.
Thank you. So I have a few questions first for our judges. I just want to highlight that Victoria coaches at the undergraduate level and Eric has done the graduate level. So their experiences, while similar, definitely have unique touches based on the populations they're working with. So my first question is, I think Victoria alluded to this, the importance of selecting a problem to address. So how did you help a team frame a problem without really doing the work for them?
Sure. So the way that CNU kind of goes about coaching, I think, is a little bit unique. We make it pretty clear from the get-go that this is all student driven, and that coaches are more of a resource than the guiding force behind the work. So Fiona, for example, was one of my team captains, and it was on Fiona to really drive having meetings with me and asking the right questions. And so I think the first time Fiona met with me, they had a handful of ideas about a problem. And my role there was kind of to say, okay, So here's where I think that you could really dive into this one. This one, what do you think about the limitations that I'm seeing? Have you thought about how to address those? So I view it less as like my job is to help them find the problem, but more to help them examine their problem in a little bit more depth. The first thing that I usually tell teams to do is do a deep dive Google search. Come up with what you think is the most obscure problem you can find within this specific SDG, and then run and see how much research you can do in those areas. And when you find something that you get excited to talk about, you've probably found a problem that's worth solving.
Eric, what are your thoughts about that?
Yeah, it's probably more similar than I anticipated in terms of at the graduate level. I do think there could be different expectations in terms of what that relationship looks like between undergrad and graduate students, but the grad students that I worked with were fairly independent. I uh, noted who was already planning to attend the conference, and I emailed them and said, "Hey, I think this could be a great opportunity to participate in this competition. Are you interested?" And had intended on sort of organizing sort of a kickoff meeting. Well, they, I think, had some conversations, at least informally, and then were ready to meet with me. And I thought I was going to have to do a little bit more prepping than I did because they already had some ideas and I was able to offer some feedback on that. Um, and I think there was a lot of that group sort of doing some self-organizing, and I met with them a couple times and provided feedback on materials that they were preparing, but it was a little bit more encouraging and directing to some resources that I thought might be useful. The feedback that I provided, I think they took into consideration, but they also had some of their own ideas that it was a matter of, okay, how do we shape this idea as opposed to me giving them an idea to run with.
Okay. Next, I'm going to ask a question about kind of like time commitment for coaches, so they know a little bit more what they're getting into. What did your coaching role look like, week to week or within a month, and how much time do coaches realistically expect to invest in the process?
Yeah, and for me, the it was really just September into October, and I joined the group for two or three meetings, maybe before the conference, and provided some feedback on some materials that they were creating. It wasn't a significant time investment for me. It was encouraging, sort of touching base. When Israel shares later, he may have more insights in terms of how often the group met without me, because I'm not sure how much they had formal meetings versus doing some asynchronous things. I think a lot of it happened, the preparation, there were some things that happened asynchronously. And then, of course, at the conference, sort of touching base, encouraging as well.
I would say it's a little bit heavier probably at the undergraduate level. And we start this process very early. So we released an application to be a part of the ILA competition teams, I want to say back in March. And we selected our students in late April, early May. They are currently they actually just yesterday got told who their teams are. So they have the ability to kind of start working on this virtually over the summer. I typically, depending on how many teams we have, I typically meet with them at least twice, I would say, over the summer virtually. I usually host a kickoff meeting where we kind of go through what did I just sign up for? What are the deadlines for ILA? All of that fun stuff. And then, like I said, it's kind of up to the teams themselves how many times they want to meet with me. The way that
Okay.
CNU does this is I again serve as kind of an umbrella coach for all of our teams. I'm on the student affairs side. And then we also assign each team a faculty mentor that can kind of help them more with the theoretical pieces. So I want to say Fiona's team probably met with me at least once a week leading up to the competition, but I had other teams that met with me maybe once a month. So we put it on them a little bit. But I'll say if you're coaching multiple teams, the time commitment can get a little bit high. I make sure that I have time built on my calendar every week for this in the fall semester. But for just one team, it's a little bit more manageable.
Yeah, I want to highlight something Victoria mentioned. Like, every institution is structured very differently. So leadership, education and formation can be housed in different parts of campus. For example, I am in both our student engagement division as well as like our college of business. But yeah, so relying on your colleagues who have expertise, I think is a really good way to think about it, especially Victoria, in your case, when you have multiple teams to juggle. Relying on those peers who I think there's always a benefit to students when they have multiple touch points in terms of the professional faculty and staff around them. My last question for you all is, what would you tell a faculty member who's on the fence about whether this is worth it, both from your perspective as well as for the students?
Go ahead, Eric. You take it.
Oh, I would say definitely it's worth it. I'm coming from the formal instruction side and being able to see students really apply these concepts outside of classroom assignments is really exciting. I mean, I think hopefully we always look for that, but you get a front row seat by coaching a team in this competition where they've really sort of taken some of these ideas and run with them and be able to engage in a competition, which is exciting, and dig into this more. So much of what we do in our classroom instruction is a more like curated, simplified, we present different models and theories, and the real world is a little messier, and the case competition, drops students into that a little bit and to wrestle with some of these things where, well, that's not a perfect fit, but this is how it aligns versus not, and to really see them wrestle with that and encourage them along the way, I think is really exciting. So I think it's a great opportunity that ILA offers for students.
Yeah, I'll second that. Our students are required, our students in the leadership program at CNU are required to at least have a minor in leadership studies, and several of them will up that to a second major. And so they get so ingrained in the classroom pieces of leadership studies that they sometimes forget that these are real things that do apply in the real world. So I think one of the coolest parts of ILA is watching them see, oh, this concept that I have spent 4 years studying actually can be used to fix this real world problem. So watching them learn the reality of their education is very, very cool. Also, especially on the undergraduate level, I think this is a transformative experience for their professional development. The confidence increases that I see in students as they go through this competition and conference experience, I think is pretty amazing. They tend to really grow in their public speaking skills, their networking abilities. They come out of the conference itself with connections that they'll use when they go into grad school. So I've seen a lot of growth in the students. And like I said, it's one of my favorite parts of my job because you kind of get to challenge them to embrace that.
Yeah, I just want to put a plug in whether or not you participate or whether or not you make the finals. If you're at the conference, I encourage you to go to the final presentations. Like, it is amazing to see what students can do, and you will inevitably learn something about very specific things that have never entered your consciousness. And just I love hearing how different people think through a problem because everyone has very different approaches. The three teams that go are all presenting, look, they're very different in how they do it. But yeah, so I just want to put that little commercial out that if you're at the conference, I would mark it down as a priority to go to the final presentations because it really is a chance for the students to shine. And like you probably have never seen anything like it, coming from students. All right, so thank you to our coaches. We're gonna transition to our past competitors with a few questions. And I want to highlight that Fiona participated at the undergraduate level, and both Jenny and Israel participated at the graduate level. So again, similar, like exact similar instructions provided to both, a little bit different experience. So for each of you, my first question is, what were you expecting to get out of the experience versus what you can say were your actual takeaways?
I'll go first. I think for me, I was expecting theoretical aspects of leadership. Um, and, prior to joining the program, I had not, thought about how some of the theories we had learned in the classroom relates with relates to real life problems. So the case competition gave me the opportunity to think about how some of these things we learn in the classroom actually has direct relationship with some of the world's challenges. Particularly the presentations, the last presentations we had during the case presentation, during the case challenge was a mentally stimulating session, and it gave us the ability to actually synthesize the ideas we had learned from the conference, what we had learned over the years through the graduate studies, and how to actually think about these things in real life scenarios. So I would say that something that stood out for me in terms of experience was bringing theory into practice.
Thank you. Fiona, how about you?
Yeah, I think for me it was a similar kind of note. I think I was worried going into it that I would be, traveling and preparing for this great competition only to just kind of basically have another leadership class in, a different place. Luckily, that is not at all what it was. And I think that kind of speaks to what we were talking about earlier with the application of all the leadership practices into real world problems. It really kind of does like seal the deal as to why are we learning this leadership stuff in the first place. So it was nice to see that it wasn't just, another leadership class. It was truly applying that to like make better decisions and for better causes.
Yeah, I'm going to piggyback what you both have shared. I think for me, it was really related to that piece of changing the way that I see research, especially when you think about being in academia. It feels like we're in this perfect world where we're like, these are 5 steps to change your life. And once you hit this, you're good for the rest of, your life. And then you realize that it's this messy process where this is what the research says, this is what the experience says, they're both informing each other. So how am I doing whenever I do research? So I think that's one of the major things that the competition did for me. It helped me to just at every stage of the process help me think through how personally I think about just the idea of research. It's not, even though, yes, perfect writing is part of it, perfect being able to put together an idea perfectly is part of it, but that's not just what it's about. It's really about what does this look like in the face of real world problems, and people who are not doing this very same research. How are you able to communicate this in a way that it makes sense to them, but you're also learning from them, and that learning is influencing what you are doing in your research? So it was kind of that process for me.
Sure. If you could think back, what process did your team use to choose its case to focus on?
Since I'm unmuted, I'll just go. So for us, we had a pretty different approach because this was something we had already had a conversation about before. So we weren't thinking about it for a competition or anything. It was just, that chatting among friends in the office and like, oh, this. I mean, the added piece to that was the SDGs. We hadn't connected the idea that we had, talked about with the SDGs, but that was where ours came from. And so one of the things that we always say to each other is never take for granted those conversations that happen in the grad student office. It might win you $1,000. So, that was kind of like the approach that got us started. It was just one of those chats in the office, and we're like, oh, maybe we should do this. And that was how that happened. Yeah.
Yeah, so for us at Virginia Tech, the summer preceding the ILA conference, the Virginia Tech College of Life Science had sponsored graduate students to a trip in DC and also to the Agricultural Research Extension Center. And that experience actually gave myself and my colleagues some, ideas about what we could possibly present during the conference. Particularly, we were intrigued by some of the findings we got from the trip to the Agricultural Research and Extension Center. And one of the findings we got was in the area of blue catfish. And we got back from the summit or the conference that we went during the summer, and Dr. Kaufman sent his email. So when we saw his email, we were wondering which of all of the experiences we had had during the summer, which one we should go for. Then we decided to go for the one that had to do with blue catfish. The next thing we did after meeting together to agree on which of the projects to go for was to interview. We decided to interview some of the people we met during our visits to the AREX Center, that's the Agricultural Research and Extension Center. We interviewed them to know if it was actually a vital issue. We also interviewed them to know the practicality of, deploying a leadership theory to solve that problem. So based on our findings from this interview with the staff and also some of the materials they had recommended, we just decided we should go for it. When we were preparing for the case competition, at every stage of the case competition, we're meeting almost, I think, bi-weekly to discuss some of our ideas. We were consistently modifying our ideas and ensuring that it actually fits the criteria of ILA, and particularly because we know Dr. Kaufman to be a very thorough person, we were ensuring that we substantiated our ideas before sending to him, and that's why he didn't have enough. He didn't have a lot of work to do. I think one thing that was vital for us during that process was, continuous improvement and also being open to learning from others.
My age is really going to show in my answer. But mine was a lot less professional and, put together than the graduate division. Our topic started from a TikTok video. That is at heart truly what, kind of kicked off our idea, which was the lumber crisis in the Romanian Carpathian Mountains, which is, I'm sure all of you know exactly what that is. But we chose it because we thought it was cool that almost no one had never heard of that unless you're like really from that area. It was a funny story to be like, yes, this did start from a TikTok about wood health. But it kind of was this thing that just you don't think it's that important, and then it kind of just opened up a whole can of worms into this whole like lumber industry that none of us had any idea about. We were all going into this like completely blindsided, and we could do so much more research on this compared to what we just presented. So ours was just a lot. And we had other ideas too. Like we discussed a lot of like different ideas and narrowed it down into like what is feasible and what we actually like felt comfortable presenting and doing research on. But at heart, that was the general idea. It started from, a TikTok or like an Instagram reel or something, and then spiraled into this great project.
I'm actually going to pull a question from the Q&A. Someone asked if you could talk about presenting at the poster session versus presenting in the final round and how those experiences work and how they're a little different.
Yeah, so presenting for the posters is a lot more casual. People will come up and you kind of present. And for my team, there was 3 of us, and so we kind of all like one of us would talk to one person and another person came up, we'd be able to branch off to them. So it's a lot more casual, not as put together. You should be able to like do each other's parts and stuff like that. The final presentation is like a formal, kind of like what you'd expect in like a class presentation. You have an audience, they're sitting and you're presenting with your 3 people. You split up, however you want to with the slide presentations. So the first one's a lot more casual, and you can kind of get your bearings that way and like kind of feel out how to present this in a good way. And then the second part is a lot more, like a professional class presentation.
Yeah. So for us, I think one thing we observed was that the poster session was we could predict some of the questions that may come up from the poster session. We also could prepare ahead of time. We had our scripts, but for the last presentation, it was I think it was a very demanding presentation because we had to think outside of the box. We had to think on the spot. Although prior to attending the conference, we were prepared and we knew that every session or every part of the competition actually would lead to you either winning or losing the competition. So we knew that, oh, we could prepare for the poster presentation, but the other one, the last one, we didn't know what to expect. And we were interviewed. The last session, we were interviewed by expert judges. So we were scared. We didn't know what to expect, but we knew that, well, so long we did our part by understanding the case enough, we're good. So that was pretty much our experience.
I For ours it was virtual. Both the poster and the in-person was virtual, so this might be different. But something that I remember being different was the fact that for the poster, it was just all about your presentation. You weren't hearing other people's presentations. So it was more like it didn't feel competitive at that point because it was just like, hey, I'm just telling you about what we're doing. But for the final presentation, it was everybody together. So you were hearing other people and you're like, wow, why did I even sign up for this in the first place? These people are amazing. So I think that was the added layer of pressure at that time, but also connected to the fact that at the poster presentation, I feel like we got a lot of feedback that really helped to prepare you for the final presentation. So, and that was really good because at that point, it wasn't even about whether you were going to proceed to the final or not. Here are these feedbacks that would help. And that was really good because it made you feel like this was a win. Regardless of whatever the outcome was, this was just learning so much and hearing that there's a lot of potential in our idea. That was good.
Yeah, and I just want to highlight from a procedural standpoint what Jenny was saying that both after the executive summary round and the poster session, you get feedback, regardless if you qualify for the finals or not. Now, we know that some people are just clicking numbers, but I think a lot of the judges they do put qualitative feedback for you because they understand the overall value of this is it's a learning experience for the students who are going through the process. And when Jenny mentioned that when you see other people's presentations, you're like, why did I sign up? Every time I watch it, I'm so thankful I'm not participating. Like, it's much easier to hear about the lumber in Romania than have to prepare anything. So, again, little advertisement, come check these out. Unfortunately, they're at the same time, the undergraduate and graduate, but either way, you really cannot lose because the thoughtfulness of the presentations and really just the learning that you're going to get, and really the change of perspective, I think is really, really valuable. So, I want to thank both our coaches and our competitors for their insights. We do have a few Q&As. They were addressed. We addressed the first one. Um, so here's this one is for Fiona. As a full-time undergraduate student, what is the commitment and workload like?
I won't sugarcoat it. It's pretty intense. I mean, I'm a double major and I'm also really involved on campus and I was still able to do it. I think as long as it's something that you like truly like care about, like it didn't feel like that much of a task. But I mean, towards the end of it, my group and I were meeting every day and sometimes it was very late. So it is something that you just want to be able to kind of think about. For sure, it is a bit of a time commitment, but I would say that like the satisfaction of just going, not even winning, but just going to this event, and just having a project that I was proud of was like miles ahead of and worth it. So.
And I'll add from a coaching perspective, it is a little bit easier if the students have the ability to at least brainstorm with each other before they come back to school in August. The time between August and mid-October flies by. We also in our application ask a question about like, tell me about a time when you had to prioritize a long-term commitment or something like that. So they already have in their heads that like, this is something that I'm going to have to build out time for. I kind of describe it as it can feel like a second class or another class for the first part of the semester. So we try to help them understand that before they even get accepted to the competition.
Yeah, I'm glad we're actually recording this, because I think it can be surprising when you're a first time competitor to see how much work some of the more seasoned teams have done. So it's a real learning curve, but I think this can help with it. But really, it is the first time you see it, it is something to behold for sure. There was another question about in terms of how the competition fits in the flow of the schedule and what the conference is like. I can answer that one. So, the executive summary is due weeks before the conference even start. That takes a little bit of time to score, so we want to give our judges time for that. That first day of the conference, the poster session is before there are the pre-conference sessions, but then the poster session happens even before the welcome reception and opening keynote. So it lets you get some of the butterflies out. And then 2 full days of the conference will pass before the finals. When you see the schedule, you see there's a variety of presentation formats, whether it is workshops, the Pecha Kucha format, some symposia, and those are the things that you will go to learn that you can incorporate into your final presentation if you do qualify for the finals. I mentioned before that you would get feedback both after the first and second round. We don't tend to provide a lot of feedback after the finals because like you've learned from rounds one and two, and round three is usually pretty good. It's more of a we love this part about it, like keep working, keep pushing on that. Um, I want to restate again some of the key dates. So the team sign up is September 23rd, and you would do that on the ILA website. The executive summaries would be due October 15th. And then again, the final two components are during that conference experience, October 28th through the 31st. And I really want to highlight again the information packet on the website. It's like 20 pages long. It it should answer everything that you have. If not, though, we have an email address. I receive all those. It's case competition at ilaglobalnetwork.org. Again, that is on that packet. So, and again, if you forget all that, just Google Kyle Odell, John Carroll, and I'll get your email and I'll make sure it gets answered. I do want to thank all of our participants. Oh, Deb just posted that email address on there for you. I want to thank all the coaches for taking time out on hopefully a beautiful day where you are to answer some of the questions. This is the first time we're doing this. I think it's a really valuable tool for everyone hoping to participate. And I also want to encourage people who are listening, if you have questions, just ask them. First, read the packet, and if you still have questions, ask them. We want to make sure that you go into the process feeling knowledgeable about the process and feeling good about what you're undertaking. And then we'll be posting this recording on the website sometime next week. So it looks like we got one more Q&A. All right. What is the practice rhythm in getting ready to present? Like, how often did you practice, and like, who was your practice audiences for the participants who did this?
So, well, we met, like I said earlier, bi-weekly. Um, from the day we knew we were going to participate in the competition till the day we presented we made our last presentation. So even during the conference, we met regularly to discuss some of the things we had learned during the conference and how they relate to what we're presenting about. Yeah, so I think for us, we're just open to meeting bi-weekly just to understand the project. And because, the idea and the case that we chose wasn't something that we're quite familiar with, it was something new to us. So we knew that we needed to do extra research.
For us, it was we presented to anyone who would listen at that point. I think we presented multiple times to like our leadership staff. We also were able to like get a bunch of leadership faculty just to get their feedback on more of like the academic side. Past winners, our other team members, other members from the school who like were in other groups. Um, but yeah, anyone who was willing to listen. And then the day before like our finals and preparing for our like slideshow, that was really intense because of course you're trying to do this presentation very quickly. It's a very quick turnaround, and get everything that you can done in like 10 minutes. So we presented a lot to each other. I think I bothered Victoria way too much with presenting to her and making sure everything sounded logical there. But I mean, I just say as much as anyone who's willing to listen, like just ask. It's there's no worst they say is no, you know. So just as much as you can.
Yeah, I just wanted to mention that we also practiced. We practiced with our coach, um, and it was very helpful.
And I want to piggyback a comment off of Fiona's. Yeah, the finals, it is a strictly timed experience. So you definitely need to practice the timing to get it down because most teams have three participants who are all trying to talk within 10 minutes. And then be prepared for live questioning, which is very different than a poster presentation and definitely different than the executive summary piece. But it's also a very professional experience. You know, if you go to a professional faculty conference, like after you present, you get peppered from the audience. So it kind of sets you up for kind of a different learning experience if you've never gone through that before. So again, I do want to offer thank you to everyone. And hopefully I'll see everyone in Toronto. And then really hopefully I'll see you at the finals that Friday evening. Other than that, everyone have a great day and enjoy the upcoming weekend.